Wow.
Yep.
There was an idea to bring together a group of remarkable people
to see if we could become something more.
So when they needed us, we could fight the battles
that they never could.
In Marvel's Avengers Infinity War, Earth's mightiest heroes now face their greatest challenge yet, as the cosmic despot Thanos of Titan descends upon Earth in search of the Infinity Stones. While he collects these stones of immense power, the Avengers and the Guardians of the Galaxy finally join forces to try and thwart this evil plan, before he can collect them all and wreak havoc and destruction across the universe. Now, we just came from the movie theater, so we've obviously had plenty of time to formulate well thought out plans and, thoughts on the movie. James.
Yes?
What do you think?
Well, I enjoyed it. As you said, haven't had a lot of time to digest here. I am sure that my opinions will, I don't want to say change, but they will evolve as I've had a little bit more time to process everything that happened. I'm doing my best not to just say tons of spoilery stuff just right now, because a lot of stuff happens in this movie.
A lot of stuff.
So I will instead lead with the burden of research. Once again, that burden fell on me for this one. Cady wanted to go into it fresh, and I totally respect that. And I, on the other hand, like sort of having one hand on the wheel in terms of knowing what's going to come. So I purchased and read the entirety of Infinity Gauntlet. Definitely had its influence here. I read Infinity War. Also, not as much of an influence as you would think, given the title, but I read the official Marvel Cinematic Universe, Infinity War Prelude, which didn't really have a lot to say, actually. It was mostly just a reminder of where all the stones were.
Previously on.
And weirdly, I finally sat down and read House of M from start to finish because, well, I had a theory. Not sure how it holds up now. We'll probably get into it later. Overall, I would say if you're a Marvel fan and you want, it's exciting and you might see some things coming, but even if you do, you're not really ready for them. And yeah, it was a good time. Not a happy movie, but worth watching. Cady, what did you think of Marvel's Infinity War?
I'm definitely glad I've been maintaining the looking at nothing, going into it kind of blind. It definitely made it more impactful. There were a few things kind of as the movie progressed, I kind of was like, oh, well, this is going to happen and that sort of thing. But that happens with any movie, really. A good movie overall. Kind of pissed you have to wait a whole year for the next one.
A little bit. Actually, no, I think it's a little bit more than a year. Fuck.
Well, still, because it's going to be the blockbuster or whatever this summer. Maybe they'll move it up again. Who knows? Yeah, I definitely enjoyed it. The collection of all of the characters, the culmination of all of that was quite the payoff.
The most ambitious crossover project ever.
They done did it. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Please go see it soon so you don't inadvertently see something and ruin things.
Yeah, it's better not to wait, because it will get ruined for you. It almost got ruined for me yesterday.
Yeah,
press.
Oh, yeah, I've been not on the internet for, specifically probably 3 or 4 days just to make sure.
At this point, we should probably talk casting, but given the manifold nature of the film, I don't really think it's completely necessary to delve into all the major players here. I mean, we could spend hours sitting and talking about, Evans and Downey Jr., because his last name is Downey Jr., as we all know.
And Sherlock
Ruffalo, Sherlock Holmes, everybody. But hopefully we'll get to their little solo excursions sometime soon. Stay tuned. So I guess for now we'll just talk about new characters, of which there weren't very many. and most of them didn't get a lot of screen time. But I mean, yeah, let's get.
Here, I'll get it.
No, this was a terrible idea.
I tried to tell you.
Nice going, Cady. When I say new, I don't necessarily mean completely new but people who got new, like, bigger, beefier roles. The most obvious of which, obviously, is Josh Brolin's Thanos.
Obviously.
Who, you want to lead off on this one? What did you think?
He's another one of those actors, too, where I'd seen him in things and I had no idea. Like, I knew the name, but I could never, like, put it to the face.
Yep.
He was great. Bit more purple than in previous installments. Mm-hmm. But it was good. It was very good.
Yeah, I would agree. He was a very effective and way more well developed than I was expecting. I think that I remember back when the first trailer broke, there was a lot of chatter amongst like comic book fans about how he wasn't wearing his iconic headdress, which does appear at least a couple of times in the movie. And while part of it kind of makes him seem a little bit more casual, at the same time, I think the main reason is because they were paying Josh Brolin to show off this character, and they wanted people to be able to see his face, and you could, and you really felt for the character. I mean, he was much more well developed without getting into too much detail than I think either of us were anticipating. Had a lot more backstory, and Josh Brolin's facial acting was a big part of that. It almost made him sympathetic.
Well, that, without going too much into it, that kind of harkens back to Black Panther, where they but where they really started to kind of develop the villain and make them a very sympathetic villain as well.
I don't think that there's necessarily any connection, but I'm glad that Marvel movies are doing that now. It's like the last few villains we've gotten have been much more well-rounded and interesting than the villains of the week that we used to get. Other new characters, I can think of 5. We have the Black Order, who's never referred to by name, and none of them are ever referred to by... I think one of them is named once. Oh, was that the 4 guys that work for... 3 guys and a girl and a pizza place that work for Thanos. As far as their acting goes, only one of them really had any notable, like, role. Most of the others were just there to hack and slash and kill. I think that they were effective in that way. Like, when they first show up, they really establish, wow, we're dealing with serious power right now.
Yes.
And I think that was effective, but at the same time, everyone except for, I don't even know what the guy's name was. Tom Von Lawler played, what did I say? Ebony Maw. All of the Black Order have, like, super metal names. Little 5 edgy 3 me. But he didn't really have a huge part. He talked a lot more than the others. I think that he was effective in communicating that character's role, but at the end, it could have been anyone, really.
Yeah, I feel like too, part of it was that they, even though they were just now introduced as Thanos's like crew, they felt very well developed, partly because of the way they look, the makeup and everything, the special effects, but it felt like they were part of a world that still existed off to the side outside of these movies.
And I guess the last one would be Peter Dinklage, who I'm not comfortable saying anything about his presence in the movie, other than that he is in it. So
he is in it. Can you please put that away?
Absolutely not.
Okay. So at this point, there's not much more we can say without venturing into spoiler territory, so spoilers.
Yeah, fair warning, because there's a lot, and you want to go into this movie as fresh as possible. Even I was kind of pissed at some of the moments that were ruined by the trailers. So, though, they did do a lot to trick you up, too, so...
I'm actually kind of looking forward to being able to go back and, like, watch trailers and, like, interviews and stuff.
Let's see how
because normally
they mislead.
I'm all about interviews, and, like, I've seen pictures and that's it. But, I can't wait. I'm so excited. I'll make myself feel better.
So, I took notes because I'm a good doobie.
I had taken notes in the past. I felt as though I needed to concentrate on the film, which...
Well, I was not actually looking at my writing the whole time.
Oh, yeah, I know.
So, there's no guarantee any of these will yield anything. Right off the bat, no opening theme for the Marvel logo. It was just...
It was very quiet.
Grim.
It was...
Ominous. But the freaking soundtrack doesn't come out until like next week, so I won't even be able to get that before I post this video. So I don't want to seem insensitive, as I probably did to our friend that I was sitting right next to. But when Heimdall bid it,
yeah,
I immediately just said, Idris Elba must be so happy, because as we all know, he came into these right before he kind of started being taken like seriously as an actor, and he's been maybe not super vocal, but he's definitely mentioned that he doesn't want to be Heimdall anymore.
That's fair.
And every fangirl wept. Oh, and every fangirl wept.
For that specific part?
No, the part right after that.
Yeah.
For all of you big Hiddleston fans out there.
I can't say, I don't want to make it true. I can't say things.
He's fucking dead. Loki is dead. He's dead, and I could not be happier, because he's a piece of shit, and I never understood the appeal.
He's dead. Again, the sympathetic villain kind of thing.
And he didn't even die the way that some other people died. He just got straight up murdered by Thanos.
It's very
choked.
Very uncomfortable.
Fuck out.
And actually, now that I think about it, I think one of the things I saw before I ended up stop watching it was something about how he was like, "Oh yes, leaving Loki behind," and I was like, "Nope." So that explains what that was about.
Yep. It legitimately bothers me when villains leave heroes alive instead of making sure that they're dead before they bail. Later on in the movie, once Thanos is accumulator, he's gathered most of the stones. I get it. Okay, he
has reasons.
Well, exactly. He's super powerful. Well, it's that. But I mean, they're even thinking, well, he's clearly won the fight, and he just leaves them alive. But at that point, I've got all these stones. What are they gonna do? I don't care. But at the beginning of the movie, when he had 2, he blew up the ship and was like, Thor will die, and he just left. And I was like, what? Actually, fun fact. In my reading, I learned that Thanos, who's even more well-developed in the comics than he was in this movie, his whole bit, one of the reasons that he loses the Infinity Gauntlet in the first place is because deep down subconsciously, he doesn't believe he's worthy of it. And so he ultimately gives away how to beat him to the enemy. And that's like a running theme with him. So it kind of makes sense for this point.
Yeah.
But it still bothers the crap out of me.
Well, later on, too, as we kind of, like, see his reasoning for doing what it is he is doing, it kind of doesn't matter, because if they're going to be one of the people who ends up dying, it's like he was saying on the planet of his own planet when this whole thing started at the beginning. It's a lottery. It was a fair lottery, randomly chosen.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I get that, but at the same time, before he actually is God, he could still easily be killed. Yeah. I'm just saying, Heimdall as a last ditch effort, as Thanos is decimating the few remaining people on the ship. Why did he kill all of them? I thought he was supposed to leave half alive. That's his whole bit.
That is his whole bit.
It seemed kind of odd that everyone was dead except like 3 people.
Well, but that was intentional, though, because he was specifically going for the stone, and they were not giving it to him.
Fair
so
enough.
He was, and I'm just going to kill everybody until you give me the stone.
It's fair, but it does sort of erode away the foundations of his whole. It's totally, it's fair. After Heimdall, as his last act, summons the Bifrost, shoots Hulk back to Earth. Hulk comes flying in, crashes into the New York Sanctum in a shot that very much resembles one of the opening scenes in the Infinity Gauntlet comic, in which, let me see here.
I love when they do that.
Well,
shots directly from the comics.
They don't currently have the rights to Silver Surfer for film, but tell me that's not. Silver Surfer comes crashing in and lands right in the Sanctum Sanctorum, and then Wong and Stephen Strange come rushing in.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure he says the exact line. Thanos is coming. He does say Thanos is coming.
I was going to say, paraphrasing.
Great danger coming this way, must be stopped. Thanos is coming. So he more or less says the same thing, which is, yeah. And yeah, in that moment, he seems to know a lot about Thanos. It struck me as a little odd, because he's like telling Doctor Strange and then Tony, when they bring him in, like all this, like everything about Thanos' plans and things. It just seemed a little bit, I mean, he wasn't even really in the room it didn't seem like most of it. It just seemed like a little bit Deus Ex Machina. I know more than my character probably should.
Well, part of it too might have been, like, we came onto the ship in the middle of the action, so who knows what he had already been telling Loki at that point.
It's true.
And who knows exactly when he hulked out, although because of the issues they seem to be having, Banner and Hulk,
yes,
one would assume that...
We'll say Hulk impotence.
Yes.
We've all been there.
Happens to everyone, I hear.
Why cold sliver find? Why cold sliver find?
That makes sense. Throughout the movie, too, not just, like, the beginning I was thinking where Thanos, the crew first shows up and Tony and they have their little quips back and forward. I was very anxious this whole movie. Like, it started right then and there.
Yeah.
Like, even before, or not quite in the very beginning, Loki kind of started it, but his death.
Yeah,
but
that moment you're like, oh, this guy means business.
When we got into New York and it started with, like, the other characters who... you know, were also, like, the big name single movie characters. I was uncomfortable the whole movie, which I'm sure was part of the...
Yeah. That's the atmosphere they were trying to cultivate, and they did a good job, and honestly, this has been a complaint with me for several Marvel films over the years, is while we all enjoy the sort of sense of levity that they often have, sometimes it can really, really undercut the serious moments when they do arise. And this movie was not as quippy, which helped, but the overall serious tone made the quips all the more obvious to me personally. And in some cases, it's for, you know, Tony Stark. That's just who he is. He doesn't take anything seriously. Same for the Guardians of the Galaxy. There's a lot of, but occasionally even someone else would say, I can't give you an example right now.
Thor.
But yeah.
Although it was mostly with the Guardians.
Someone would say something, just like a little, like, snide comment in the middle of an otherwise, maybe not immediately serious, but about to become really serious moment, not taking in the overall overwhelming danger in front of them. And it picked away at me a little bit. I don't know if you feel that way.
I didn't necessarily, if only because with the specific characters who were quipping and then that sort of thing, it worked. I mean, with the whole thing with Peter and Tony's back and forth, where he's like, "Oh, sorry, I'm here to help," and he's like, "Just go sit down because you're a child." Like,
well, and I'm not saying that it happened every time. Like, especially when they weren't actively, like, maybe after the threat's been neutralized for the moment, and then it happens, and it feels kind of okay. They're like, "Oh, good, everyone feels better. We're safe for now." But there were moments like, when Thanos shows up on Titan, and the Guardians are there, and Tony's there, and Spider-Man's there, and Sorcerer Supreme's there. Quill has seen the seriousness of this situation. He already knows that he took Gamora. He doesn't know that she's dead too, yet. But he calls him Grimace. And I'm just like, dude, this guy could, like, turn you inside out just by pointing at you. Come on.
Well, that's always been, like, a defense mechanism for him, too. It's just...
I'm the same way.
Unrelenting jokes.
It's just like, I feel like in that situation, I probably would not do that.
It might have also, I think, been played up a little bit just to kind of remind people, oh yes, well, these are the Guardians. They had their movie which did these things. And then, like, oh yes, Tony Stark with his quips and whatnot. Like, I feel like, especially when they were first introduced, it was definitely played up to kind of...
The opening scene for the Guardians, because it felt like it was such a tonal shift. Everything kind of happened on Earth at that point, and they moved over to it. And then it was like, oh, okay, they're here with Thor. Thor's most recent movie was a straight-up comedy. It didn't feel out of place there. I mean, they just meant they weren't really aware of what was happening with Thanos and Earth being a mess, and Thor had to explain everything. So I'm not saying all of it didn't land. I'm not even saying that much of it didn't land. It's just like, I got the joke. It's just like, there were so many people that laughed out loud at things that I was like, yeah, that's kind of funny, but it's not lol.
Yeah. Well, part of that, too, is probably, like, the group mentality.
They were nervous, too, and they were like, oh, look, a joke, I feel better now, because things are going to happen.
Yep. That was partly me for certain things.
Hulk, Wong, Stephen Strange, Iron Man. They're at the Sanctum, and then they hear and see people running outside. Tony goes outside, is immediately aware that something really wrong is happening, and it takes him a good 2 minutes to activate his suit, which he always has on him now.
Yes.
Why?
I don't know, for dramatic effect.
I know, but it's
That
just
was-
like, just do it.
Yeah.
Do something.
It had to be visually the most, you know.
Yeah. Oh, the
He had to
enemy's
be in
here.
danger. Oh, geez, he's almost in danger.
Yeah.
That's how quick he can put it on.
Yeah.
But actually, that whole sequence was I think not the introduction, but a great way to kind of bring that immediate like threat into focus. But it was also very like visually striking when he first rounds that corner and like you're like, oh look, there's a big weird like cloud. Oh, it's a giant spaceship. Like it was very nerve-wracking.
Yeah. And that's sort of the point I was making about the Black Order when they first show up. Initially, it's just Ebony Maw and Obsidian Badass, or whatever their names are, the big guy. And they show up, and Ebony Maw, he's a freaking genie.
Yeah.
Like, the powers that he exhibits just in that first fight really bring to the table. It's like, this is really serious right now. That guy is like a major telekineticist level. I can't even describe it. Like, I the entire time I was like, how are they even going to beat this guy, let alone the guy who orders him around? So, yeah, it was an effective scene to set the tone and really drive home the level of danger that was going to be expressed for the rest of the movie. Russes have candy. Goften such Andre, it's great bamboo. What the fuck?
Stanley's cameo, right?
My next note says, buses have cameras. Do they not? Do you not remember that?
They generally do, yes.
Yeah, well, maybe things have changed in the 15 years since I rode a school bus. Oh god, I'm old. But I'm pretty sure that they had cameras. In fact, most of them had monitors attached to those cameras so you could see yourself. So what the hell was Peter thinking when he was like, oh, Ned, make a distraction, which he did a great job of, by the way, but
Shit, we're all gonna die.
it just seemed like you're taking some pretty big chances here, just like in his own movie when he lifts up the lockers. Are there no security cameras in that school? What the fuck?
Well, I'd be less concerned about the security cameras in the school, like, than, you know, a bus. Also, you know, jumping out a window on a busy freeway with all of the other cars and whatnot and people staring at you, but that's fine. He had the mask.
It's fine. It's fine. No one, even if they were like, they looked out the window and I seriously, I don't
It's a
understand.
high school student.
I do not understand how people haven't, at least some people haven't figured out who he is.
I'm trying to think, like, sequentially, too, like, because I got to a certain point in that movie and I just, like, I was a bit overwhelmed, and then, you know, terrible things are happening, and then I still, you know, oh, well, it's okay, it's fine, don't worry about that. It didn't really happen, or, you know, it means nothing, and then it did. And
little
then
indications that things might be...
They kept happening, and I just...
So Thanos, one of the reasons, there were moments in which I found myself sympathizing with him, not just because his relationship with Gamora as a father figure and things like that are, you know, relatable, but I mean, like, his motivation actually does, he explains it in such a way that it actually does kind of make sense. I mean, it's narrow-minded, and it's depressing as shit, but he's not really wrong. Not entirely. It's more or less, it's Ultron's mindset, sort of. It's like Ultron's like, the only way for peace is just to kill everything that could possibly make war. Problem solved. Then there's no more war.
No middle ground. It's...
And this is, his motivate is by killing half of the entire universe, again, fairly, rich, poor, you know, strong, weak, just eliminating them. All the people that are left, you know, they'll have life. There'll be more resources to go around for everyone, and it'll become a paradise like that one planet that he described at the beginning. I don't understand how doing that brings balance to the universe, which was a phrase that he said at least a couple of times, because the people will just repopulate.
And then there'll be another...
And then you'll have to do it again. I mean, it's... The fact is the universe is gonna burn out. Why not just let it do it and not be such a dick?
Because he has the power to have it happen now.
Well, no, it's because Josh Brolin needed depth, and
yeah,
you know, he was way too decent an actor to waste on a mindless, I want to just destroy everything because I'm a dick. Because, I mean, in the comics, his whole motivation is he's a boner for the abstract concept of death, who takes the form of a lovely woman. So, not explored at all here, interestingly. No. I kept expecting it, like, every time when that one character that I'm not even comfortable mentioning because by name shows up looks like death, not death. And then at the end, after he snaps his fingers and there's that feminine figure in the archways, I thought that was probably going to be death. Wasn't death either. So I'm actually kind of glad, because the abstract concept things are just way too high concept, I think, for your average moviegoer, and I don't think it was necessary here. His motivations were clear and well illustrated.
Yep.
Keep talking about nitpicking, criticizing stuff. Is there anything that you loved about the movie explicitly? And feel free to dive into spoilery territory.
I don't know. It's one of those things where, like life, the negative, horrible things stick out most. So it's hard for me to remember the fun, happy things at this moment in time. I liked the moments where characters who had been either separated for some time were finally reunited, like Bruce and Tony when they saw each other again.
Why should I listen to you? I'm here too. Oh, cool.
Bucky and Steve.
That was a nice moment.
Probably the first
they got
time
to
they'd
hug
seen each other in a while
since Bucky died. Yeah. That they got to like hug, that like he wasn't actively combating him, or at least mentally. Yeah, he wasn't in a good place.
I mean, and again, parts of the movie were gorgeous when they went back to Wakanda again.
Yeah, that, and also, I mean, a lot of planets in this movie, and while I won't say that there's a lot of diversity in the way that they're portrayed, it's still, the visual effects are really good. Like, they feel real, and that this extends to the characters that are largely CGI. Like, obviously, Thanos is a big purple guy with a ball sack for a chin, but... Well,
his dark elf chick was, like, completely CGI. I mean, it obviously was a person over, but her face was entirely CGI.
So...
and it looked good.
But that's my point, is his purple skin still looked like skin, and the muscle movements and all that. I mean, this is not really something to talk about all that much these days, because it just gets better every year. But he, at no point did I think, he doesn't look real for what he is.
Yeah, and it's such standard practice, too, with films like this, and just in general today, as you were saying, that it's something that it's... The suspension of disbelief it's so much easier to achieve.
Minor detail, Captain America has lost the star on his suit.
It was a very recessed, like, suggestion of a star.
Yeah, well, the white part is gone, but the outline around it is still there, faded and whatnot. And I really liked that. Not only symbolically it was representative, but just visually it was pleasing. It gave him sort of like a less spangly, more subdued look, which suited the character's position now. So
I was kind of wondering if they were going to, like, call him, like, the Nomad or something like that, which is what that version of the character, I guess, is based on from the comics.
Yeah, that makes sense.
When people were like, oh, hello, Captain, he would be like, I'm not the Captain anymore, which he didn't.
Well, Groot said, I am Groot, and he said, I'm Steve Rogers, not I'm Captain America. So that could have just been him being polite. He used his real name.
He sounded pretty confused, but that was a very funny moment as well.
Yes. I was really worried that the movie was going to feel overstuffed and kind of just packed to the gills, and certain things were going to feel rushed. I suspect, I know myself pretty well, and I suspect that as time goes on, I will sort of notice that certain elements might feel that way. But as I watched it this time, there was no point where I really felt like it was they were just trying to jam stuff in, like the openings, like 4 or 5 settings in Thor Ragnarok, where they just had to tell this story really quick so they could get to the story they wanted to tell. This one, obviously, it's all over the place, but like I think the fact that he's seeking the 6 stones so everyone has a place to go really gives it some direction, and it keeps it sort of episodic. But the one, I don't even know if it's a complaint, because I'd have to watch it a lot more times to really figure out whether or not they did it the best way that they possibly could. But there were certain moments in which a lot of the characters, because the characters are separated for a lot of the movie in little groups, where we would go, like, say we'd have a scene with Cap and his crew, and then we'd go to the Guardians of the Galaxy, and then we'd go back to Earth, and then we'd go to Rocket and Groot and Thor.
Yep.
And then we'd go 5 scenes in which multiple groups get a couple of scenes, and then we go back to Iron Man. And it was just like, I mean, obviously it would be kind of lazy and a little too systemic or repetitive to just be like, Iron Man scene, Captain America scene, Guardian scene, Iron Man scene, Captain,
Well, that might be a way too. Who's to say how far they actually ended up traveling? But that might have been a way too to kind of well, they're spending all this time traveling, so we'll focus on these other
That's
characters.
a good point. I mean, and like I said, it's not necessarily the pacing would take a lot of you have to pick it apart to really decide whether or not they could have done it better.
Again, it could have, and it may not have been a fully something that they would have expected people to pick up on. But if you kind of break it down and think about it, that's totally something that the Russo brothers would have done. Is they're traveling, so we'll just focus on all of the other people for now. And
and in general, I feel like the most moviegoers don't think about just your average person who likes adventure, fun movies aren't going to think that deeply about things like writing and they just, they can enjoy it for being fun, and that's fine. But that's not why I'm here, and it's not how I process movies, because my dad was a physics teacher.
And, I mean, in that case, too, as someone who generally will watch a movie from, thinking about things specifically from, a cinematography point of view, or, someone, ooh, that's a good piece of writing or character development.
Yep.
I did very little of that this movie. I was super in the moment for this, which, even with movies that are, of this sort of caliber, I always tend to kind of have thoughts oh, this shot was they did this because of this, and very, very little of that going on.
Yeah, I mean, it really kind of calls for that, and, I mean, let's face it, while Joe Russo, they're very story-driven directors, in my experience, they're not known for, amazing cinematography or anything. Not any of the Marvel movies that I've seen them do.
Well, no, and I mean...
It's more about story and pacing, and that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, every director has their style, but this movie was not beautifully shot.
Yeah. I mean, it did have its moments. Some of the space shots were gorgeous. But, I mean, even aside from that, I tend to, even if there's not much to be found, I'll, kind of think of things that way. Mm-hmm. Nope.
Yeah, there was just too much going on, really. So you might spend the better part of the movie wondering where Nebula is. I did, because she's not there when the Guardians show up. When she does show up, Thanos has her, I don't even know how to describe it. She's in pieces. Suspended and, in miserable, agonizing pain. And he's using her to get to Gamora. But the reason I bring this up, because obviously anyone who's seen the posters knows she's in the movie, so...
I totally forgot.
I know. Is that in the original Infinity Gauntlet comic, I don't know anything about what led up to this, but at the beginning of that comic, she is dead. And he's, as punishment for some slight she did in her life, he's just dragging her around as a zombie companion.
Dark.
And in the end, she's all when the many heroes in that story manage to get the gauntlet off of Thanos, she's the one that picks it up, and she becomes the new goddess of the universe, so to speak. So I'm wondering if maybe that could be in the cards. She's got a lot of anger in her. It wouldn't surprise me if she was at least tempted by the gauntlet at some point. But I feel like the fact that she was in pieces was a direct reference to the fact that she was zombified in Infinity Gauntlet. I mentioned the planets before, and how, they felt
like planets.
Yeah. But one thing based off of the one particular thing that I feel they didn't really show in the trailers is just how much of this movie takes place not on Earth. Which, again, is a good thing. I mean, if they're going to have a trailer, it should build hype and not reveal anything, really. So, if you're expecting a lot of this movie to take place on Earth, don't. But then again, you've already seen the movie because you're still watching after the spoilers. So, yep.
So you know what's up.
Twist for twist's sake, that's what it was. At one point, I mentioned it earlier, there is a mysterious character, or not all that mysterious, a character from the past who we have not seen in a long time, who shows up out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere.
There was an audible gasp in the theater. I think my ears popped.
It was, yeah.
And I was among them. I was like, oh, what is he doing here? Those of you who have watched know who we're talking about. We're not going to say this character's name, because if you're still watching, I still want you to gasp. But I can safely say there was no reason or explanation for him to be there.
No.
Except maybe just to elicit that reaction. They try to explain it, but...
I guess they try to explain it. But no, apparently, looking back at the credits, it's not even the actor who I thought it was, but the voice before the character was revealed was so spot on that I've had a reaction before I think anyone else, unless other people.
That's who was gasping early.
But no, I had a flail. Like, it was definitely a thing. The kid sitting next to me was like, what the hell is she doing? But it was, and again, not even the actor, which blows my mind.
Boggling.
Blows my mind. But yes, it was just...
But my point, yeah.
Shock value.
It just felt like a twist for twist's sake, which, as a general rule, I do not approve of.
Mm.
It did not... It was as surprising as the twist in Homecoming, but with none of the meat.
Okay, I was going to say, I wouldn't agree, but with none of the meat,
I was just as surprised, but after it, I was just like, oh, why? I would argue the same thing for Peter Dinklage's character in this movie. I mean, he's got a little bit more of a role, but it could have been anyone. He's not that important. He does an important thing, but he's not...
Hey, do you want to be in the MCU?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
That said, not at all what you would expect in at least one particular way. When they finally arrive in Wakanda, I had forgotten why they were going there because it had been so long since we saw that group. I knew that they were going to Wakanda. It came back to me like almost immediately, like as soon as they referenced it.
I just took a second now, like, why did they go back to Wakanda?
Exactly. And that sort of heralds back to what I was saying before, just a little bit about how maybe if the scenes were a little bit closer together, because you want to just forget about it enough that you're not thinking about it, but you don't want to be like, wait, why did they go to Wakanda again? It turns out, obviously, that they need Shuri to figure out a way to remove the Mind Stone without totally destroying Vision.
They surely do.
And they could not have picked a better person. She specifically says in the prelude that she's smarter than Tony Stark, which is one of the few things in there that was not in any movie, and I genuinely enjoyed.
I did like that moment, too, where she was like, why did you even bother doing it this way? Because it was very dumb. And Bruce was like, well, because we didn't think of it.
No,
she was like, oh, well, I could have done it better.
Just saying.
Speaking of Wakanda, the moment that a lot of people, I'm sure, who had seen it was it in the trailers?
Yeah, I mean, a large part of that battle, the final battle in Wakanda.
The battle in Wakanda, the Hulk in the Hulkbuster armor.
Well, Bruce Banner. Bruce
Banner in the Hulkbuster armor, which was ruined for me by a flippin' Lego set.
Me too.
In Walmart. But yeah, and I mean, I was kind of sad by the Lego set. I mean, I saw the Lego set and I was like, oh, please, dude. It wasn't in, like, the Wakanda set. It was just...
Well, no, but there's a set that has, like, it has Black Panther and, like, Okoye and a couple of other major players in that fight. No Tony Stark, Hulkbuster, and Bruce Banner.
Flippin' Legos.
Similarly, I suspected that Thor was forging a new weapon based on the trailers, but I knew that it was exactly what it was because I saw the frickin' toy when I was purchasing this little monstrosity here. So it was not a twist at all. Initially I just thought he was making a new Mjolnir or another hammer with a similar name.
Mew Mew.
Fun fact, and it's not at any point stated in the movie, but I conferred with a couple of my much more knowledgeable on the comics friends. The alien forces that Thanos' people summon to Wakanda are very clearly, at least inspired by, modeled on a species of alien from the comics called the Outriders, which, honestly, I've only read exactly one comic, not even a whole story, just one comic with them in it, because Infinity Issue 1 was included in the prelude. And, again, I don't know for sure if that's what they're supposed to be, or if it was just a visual homage, but the Outriders, they're essentially, their job is to, they're created, and they're given a job, and their job is to go do that job, and then they come back, and their reward is death. So they're basically a cosmic Meeseeks. Which I just wanted to include so I could make that reference. Speaking of Hulk and the Hulkbuster, where did they get Veronica? The Hulkbuster suit?
Yeah.
Like, how did they have access to it? Tony wasn't there. I mean, it's reasonable to assume that because they built it together, that Bruce also had some sort of subroutine that he could summon. It just, like, it seemed kind of out of place to me, just for a moment. That's only because I overthink things, obviously. There's plenty of possible explanations, but I'm
trying to think if I had that thought, like, where the hell did they get that from? I don't think I did.
Obviously, he saw the Lego set at the store, and he was like, oh, I'm going to use that in the final battle.
Good job, Lego. I guess you did good.
You saved the world. Half the world. There was, this is a little bit more, I don't want to say political, but social than I want to get typically. Historically, these movies have only had male villains, at least in terms of fighting. There are a couple of exceptions. More recent, Hela, I think, is the notable exception. In fact, I think she's the only one I can really think of that's the main villain. The point is, I am not a woman, in case you didn't know. But I noted there was a moment where I couldn't help but think that it was almost a little bit too on the nose. There's a moment when the female black... I know
what you're talking about.
Knight... What do I call him? Blackguard, whatever. The female death metal band, a member, is sort of isolated in the final conflict in Wakanda. And then Black Widow, Scarlet Witch, and Okoye show up, and they have a little scuffle. And it's just the four of them, and they're all women.
She's actually fighting Scarlet Witch.
Yes.
And she's like ganging up on her and not necessarily going to overpower her, but she said, you're alone. And then from behind her is, no, she's not. And then the other two came in.
But that's the point. The point is, it somehow ended up all women. And at the same time, I feel like, I mean, obviously, it's a very powerful and disturbing image to see a guy throwing a woman around, especially in the current landscape. And I'm not saying that they should have done it, but it struck me as I was very aware of it when it was happening.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Right, and it's not just me.
No, I'm sure that was very intentional.
And it's not something that they've ever really had to face before because they've only had really one notable female villain. And obviously there are like minor scuffles in which we've seen females fight males. But I mean, Black Widow all the time, she's winning. I mean, we never really see her. And it struck me as very, very obvious. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but I could not help but notice it. That's all.
Yeah, no, it was very apparent.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the ending. Well, I was going to let you do the lead-in, but you're obviously not in a place to talk about it, really. Really, if you have not seen the movie, just don't. The comics fans among you, or even just the people who really love the movies, will at least see it coming in a sense, but just because you do doesn't mean, it's like preparing for the death of a loved one. It doesn't matter how prepared you are, how much you expected it. It's still, when it actually happens, it feels different. And this movie, anyone who's read Infinity Gauntlet knows that Thanos, in the comics, he does it to impress death, but he snaps his fingers and literally just wipes half the life forms in the universe out of existence. And that happens here. And unlike in the comics, he does it, and you get to watch. It happens in the blink of an eye in Infinity Gauntlet. In this, it sort of slowly happens over a few minutes, and you get to watch as the characters realize not only that it's happening, but for many of them, that it's happening to them. And it's tough. It's tough to watch.
And after you the audience realize what happens as it cuts to the different groups of characters, you get to kind of like, ooh, who's it going to be in this group? And it's not a good time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't all happen at once, so like one character will go, and then it just kind of dominoes, and it's not a good.
And it was effective. Like I said, blink of an eye in the comics, really a great choice here by them. It gave the characters, it gave the deaths a lot more weight.
Yeah.
And I'd be lying if I said that. I mean, like I said, I sort of saw this coming, but aside from the fact that no matter how much you prepare, if you really love the characters, it's not necessarily easy to watch. But also, there was that part of me that didn't necessarily think that Marvel really had the guts.
Yeah.
And to be honest, Iron Man, Captain America, Hulk, and Thor, the big four, at least at the beginning, they're still there. So,
yeah, and it was. I feel like it was made not necessarily more effective going on opening night, but it was the type of audience too, where with each loss, it was and like certain people would feel it more for certain characters, and it was pretty brutal. I mean, the one thing that I did notice, regardless of all of the domino effect sad times, Jeremy Renner was not in this movie at all.
Yeah, I'd started to suspect that he might not be because I watched the trailers and I saw the posters and his name didn't appear on anything. Mm-hmm. A little bit sad. I mean, they do have they have a single line that sort of explains why he and Scott Lang aren't around, and it's because they're the only two that have families. Mm-hmm. So they're more or less on house arrest after the events of Civil War, which is better than being on the raft.
Yep.
Which is good, because I was wondering, I was like, after Cap breaks everyone out,
what are they going to do?
They go back to their family. Isn't that the first place the government's going to look for those two? Then again, I guess they're relatively minor threats.
Well, with Hawkeye anyway, the farm's pretty off the grid, his family's farm.
Still,
I'm sure
someone's got to know.
Safe houses he can go to, though. I'm sure there's some somewhere.
Yeah, but uprooting his whole family, it's fine. The point is they explain it, and their explanation makes sense. They're like, okay, fine, we'll let you live with your family, just stay home.
Just stay home.
So, and he does. And he's probably fine, because Hawkeye is certainly not known for dying ever. It's not the thing that he does most of all.
No. Although I do have a theory that I know he filmed something, and I have a theory that he gets brought back into the second film because one or maybe all of his family are of the disappeared. That
would certainly get him back in the mood, I'd say. I personally predicted that we would not see Scott Lang or any of his crew in this movie. In fact, I suspect that Ant-Man and the Wasp takes place entirely before it, given the current landscape.
And maybe they'll have an end scene.
And maybe there will be an end credit scene that sort of ties into it, and that's how they get involved in the fight. But yeah, I guess we'll find out in a few weeks after a couple other movies. So I mentioned earlier that I at least had a theory about this movie and possibly its sequel that involved, or at least somehow related to, the House of M storyline, which, for those of you who don't know, is the comic storyline in which Wanda Maximoff, first, she makes it so that mutants are the dominant species in the world to protect herself and her family. And then, at the end, when she realizes that her father has betrayed her, and that mutants are dangerous, she says, no more mutants. And the mutant decimation happens, and literally, 90% of all mutants on the planet just go back to being normal humans. Now, as most of us know, the recent months have been abuzz with this impending Disney-Fox merger, which, unless the FCC rules it a monopoly, it's going to happen. And that would, of course, bring X-Men, Fantastic Four, probably a couple of other random properties that I'm not aware of, back into the fold for Disney that would enable them to, Marvel Studios, to use those characters. Now, obviously, we're 19 movies in, 7 TV series, at least.
Many. When you say
tie-in comics and stuff like that. And it would be weird for mutants to just suddenly, oh yeah, we've been just laying low the whole time, world-ending events, we don't care, whatever. My theory is that was that somehow Scarlet Witch would decide that the world would be safer, as she did, in fact, in the comic, if more people were powerful. It would sort of balance things out, and it would certainly protect the world when people like Thanos came knocking on their door. Mm-hmm. Sort of a yes, more mutants, if you will. I don't know how they're planning on handling it, but I can safely say that if that is their plan, they're going to have to do a little bit of legwork, because Wanda may not have seen the end of this film. Yeah, she was one of the ones that turned to dust. Speculation. What do you think is going to happen in the next movie, Cady?
One of the things that I kind of had an idea that they might do it. See, it's very not formulaic, but it's definitely something that I think would have crossed their minds to do. On Titan, when Doctor Strange was handing over the stone, apparently, and it was crushed to reveal that the stone was not actually in the case.
Yep.
I mean, immediately, as soon as they started fighting, I was like, he had to have hidden the stone somewhere. He's not gonna, give Thanos the opportunity to take it that easily.
Yes.
But I was wondering, too, since it is the time stone, if he somehow created, like, a time pocket that, after a certain point, may jump back to the beginning to repeat itself, kind of like how he did
with Dormammu. After he came to bargain.
So maybe this whole... From that point forward, or from whatever point started it forward, it's all just like a time bubble of some sort.
Or I think it was mentioned that possibly he sort of massaged the stone into like slipping into the one timeline that he knows is successful, and maybe that's why he sacrificed himself to save Stark.
Which he said he would never do.
It's true, he did. Literally, his exact words. He's the only one who had seen the future.
Yeah.
So it has to factor in some way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and speaking of characters saying things that come back later, I had a thought, actually just a little earlier in the video, that one of the running themes that that Cap kept going on about was we do not trade lives, like he kept saying to Vision. And it kind of goes back a little bit to Avengers as well, where, Tony doesn't know how to take one for the team and everything, and he had that moment where we weren't quite sure he was going to make it. But I have a feeling that come the end of the series, Cap will trade his life for Tony.
Yeah, I mean, you say that, and I think you're totally right. I mean, there's no dancing around it. I am very confident that Chris Evans only has one more movie on his contract. I'm pretty sure I've read that many times recently. And Iron Man has been sort of dancing around. I'm not sure how many of his cameos count. Not that he's made that many cameos. I mean, I wouldn't call his role in Spider-Man a cameo.
Yeah, no.
But, yeah, the point is they're both on their way out in terms of contractual obligation to continue in the movies. And I think that Cap... he's ready to die. Maybe not the character, but like he's the one that it would have the most impact, I think, of the main four. Though just the fact that Hulk can die would be impressive to me. It was stated to me by a mutual friend of ours who was sitting next to me that he was really upset that Black Panther was one of the people who lost the lottery, we'll say, because, I mean, first of all, since that movie came out, Black Panther has easily become his favorite. But he also is concerned that all these characters being dead, that means that their role has to be severely limited in at least some capacity in Infinity Wars 4, right? I posited to him, and again, I don't know enough to say for sure that this is going to happen, but death, especially in this world, is it unreasonable to assume that they're just on, like, another plane? Maybe they're on the Soul Plane. Thanos himself goes there after he uses it. So it could just be that they band together and try to find a way back to the living realm. I think that we will see them before they're back among the living doing something. It's just a prediction. I'm not saying it's definitely going to happen, but they got all these great actors, and it would be, maybe they'll use Wanda to get back, because if anyone could do it, it's her, because she could turn the entire world inside out if you pissed her off enough, even if she doesn't know it yet.
See, I was going to say I completely disagree, and I think we won't see them again until the conflict is resolved. But you mentioned Wanda.
I think it would be more effective that way.
Yeah.
But I also don't think that, from a practical standpoint, that Marvel will necessarily do it. But then again, I didn't think they'd kill off almost everyone in this movie, so...
Yeah. And they chose at least some of the people that they chose, I'm sure, just for the impact, like Black Panther. That was just because that was the most...
Well, to be fair, again, though, this was being made before they knew exactly how big Black Panther was going to be. This was all done filming and writing and everything by the time that movie came out. They had no idea it was going to top as well as it did.
That's true.
So
maybe it was just let's gamble on this and hope. But yeah, no, that's a fair point.
Yeah, I'm sure
I forget that.
I'm sure a lot of people were pissed about it. The guy in front of me was like, "Oh fuck." It might just be because some of the people that have been around since the beginning some of them are getting a little old, honestly, and some of them, just from a contractual standpoint, are reaching that point where their contracts might be up, that they got to survive to get that last movie under their belts and give them a proper send-off, like we got with frickin' Wolverine in Logan, which I know you still haven't seen. But that's easily the best X-Men film. So, well, it was a lot of ground to cover, but I guess that's pretty much it for Infinity War.
Yeah, and as always, if you enjoyed what you saw today, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and spread the word.
Until next time, we're Cady and Cady.
And we'll see you soon.
Oh, fuck!